channel, this our own platform of direct communication to the people who matter the most, which are going to be our players, the consumers, then why do all these other things? And that's like the shift that we start seeing that's happening. Now, okay, how does it change for indie devs a little bit? Because it's not quite there with Nintendo, right? That is just simply having other opportunities that are, coming up, like other similar styled events or even quite different that are now becoming more in the forefront. And I think one good example, or a couple of good examples of that is Summer's Games Fest, I believe was one, but also now you have initiatives from big platforms like Xbox, having their their indie focus. And then also there's Wholesome Games Direct. There's so many other events now that are going on that are really blowing up and providing indies with that spotlight. So while it might not be your own specific channel that you can go directly to your consumers with, like Nintendo has, at least these are a lot of other opportunities that are coming up in an event format to get that inclusivity that keeps growing and growing on the indie front.
And the thing for the multi-platform titles, specifically on the indie side, is that while you may not have the audience of a Nintendo or an Xbox, a lot of people can certainly leverage those audiences as well. When they have those indie focuses, that creates opportunity for people to be present in those discussions. And that's not even necessarily just in the way of events, right? Like, you can use Nintendo's Switch subreddit to post about your indie game that's launching on the platform. So a lot of these audiences are being created for you just by virtue of the platforms that you're putting your games on.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just really interesting to see this whole dynamic and like how this affects everything as a whole, and it all comes down to demand. Right? Everything else comes down to demand. That's why with whole COVID, some prices on stuff, if you use Amazon a lot, is just what? I never paid for that much before. Over here at one point, it was toilet paper. People spending lots and lots of money on toilet paper. Anyways, still, it comes down to demand. It's really interesting though how so much of these shifts and the dynamic of it can really create in a lot of way, just a lot more opportunities. So why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit more about some other events that we have going on, like Wholesome Direct, because that's a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, so we've talked about Wholesome Direct briefly on the show before because Jenny Wyndham, one of the people who hosts it, was on the show with us a couple of times. It's essentially a direct style presentation with a series of games. The wholesome phrasing is typically geared towards games that have core mechanics that aren't necessarily rooted in violence, for instance. So a lot of the focus would be on things like creative puzzle solving, exploration, resource management, all sorts of other mechanics. And they recently had a presentation that highlighted a bunch of indie developers. The beauty of presentations like this is that they have what I think is kind of one of the special things about indie games is that you're not always just marketing the game itself. Sometimes you're also kind of marketing the identity of your studio. And this presentation really did focus on making sure that the developers themselves got to describe details about their games. And I think when you have that level of excitement with it, it creates some real serious authenticity. I know Victoria Tran also was one of the hosts this year, who we've had on the show before as well. It was an excellent watch. There were a few games in there that I was really excited about. I'd have to go back and compile a list of them. But I really love a good puzzle platformer or puzzle games of any kind. I didn't think it was my genre of choice, but as I get older, I think I more and more lean that direction.
Yeah, and I can't forget I can't remember the other host's name too, but his name is Derek, and he's from Waking Oni team, which Tim Robinson was on the show too. That's his partner as well. So really great. Really great like host there. And what I think is really cool about the Wholesome Direct, now obviously this doesn't necessarily apply to everybody who's interested in being on that show, because your game might be much different, but I think a good thing to note here is just simply the format and how much of a change that is. And I mean, and these are people definitely well known within the indie industry, right? But I mean, it's really like I'm saying is like it's small in comparison to E3, but man, it has it blown up. And there's other events that are basically doing the same type of thing and going beyond that. And the format, which you outlined too, I thought was great. It really gave a quick, they were quick because they really packed in a lot of games into the Wholesome, the whole event, but they still had that quick platform to introduce the studio. It gave a quick snippet of the game, and then you just saw a lot of awesome gameplay going on. And just to have that format, that platform to speak on and just showcase in that way, it was simple. Like, I think by design, like, you wouldn't want to have it try to be any more elaborate than that. And I mean, yeah, you're always going to have your big like event style shows where they're going to go high production value, everything. They're on a set or on a stage that has rigging and all this other stuff. But like
every 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, right? Like, but it's like, I don't know. Me personally, sometimes, I mean, that stuff can be fun, but they're doing it on purpose to really build up anticipation and everything else, and all that great stuff. But it's just like, sometimes it's just like, I mean, how do we behave as players, right? Just let me know if I want to see the game or not. Like if I'm interested. I mean, that's how when we were talking to Chris Zukowski forever ago, that's what he essentially found out is like people just like, I want the info that I need on the game to decide whether I wishlist it or not or buy it or not, right? They're looking at screenshots, they're looking at gameplay, then they make the decision. Like shows in that format, but still give that that space, that platform for indies to talk more, I think is really important, and probably maybe more of the direction we're going to start seeing these types of events.
Yeah, the thing that excites me the most about Wholesome Games Direct 2 is like the specific criteria by which the games are compiled. Because I like, games of all different types, but to see them not separated necessarily by company or studio or what have you, rather by like theme and mechanics and things like that, that excites me because I think it sets a really strong precedent for the ability for indie studios to collaborate and create these kind of curated events for people who value certain things in their games. It'd be it like, I don't know, what if there were like a Wholesome Game style direct, but it was just platformers or just RPGs, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's still a collaboration across different studios with different mechanics and different theming in their games. Like that the idea of that and the idea for people to be able to create kind of those more catered experiences, I think is a big benefit to it's the pro to the con of oversaturation, right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, there are a lot of games and that makes it hard to sell games, but that also means that we can watch niches grow and accommodate accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's such a good point too, because through that collaboration, well, first of all, we're already seeing that happening in a different way where a lot of developers will get together and make pitches to Steam essentially to say, hey, look, why don't we have this like sale going on, whether it's German game developers or game developers of this type of game or whatever, as long as you have like a good enough reason. In some cases, Steam has been able to, in worst case scenario, they say no, but they can come back and say, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, right? But taking that a bit further, like, and essentially that's what Jenny and Victoria were doing with Wholesome Direct, is they're like, hey, they wanted to focus it, they collaborated, and then they put this event together essentially. I don't know if they were the main people behind it. I would assume so, but at the same time, there's probably a lot of other people involved. I don't want to leave those folks out either. But the point is, a group of people got together and wanted to focus on this. They had their own mission and purpose for it, right? And then they created an event. Now, what's to say that you guys, indie developers, can't do that amongst each other, or do something like that? It might not be something you really want to do or whatever like that, but if you think that's good, basically what they did in a way and what you could potentially do, and this is something that I think last episode Thomas Brush talks about in terms of one of his main focus points is in terms of relating to where he is today, is he created his own platform. So why couldn't you create your own platform, maybe not just for yourself, but with other people, and collaborate with people and create something like an event like that really showcases the types of styles of games that you would like to make, and then just bringing other people into that. Again, I mean, it's just one other idea to consider to really not just get yourself out there, but to help the industry as a whole, and to be kind of stand out a little bit more, because the reality of all this that we're talking about now too is that through these different events that are making things more accessible and more inclusive to indies, and it's just going to mean that there's going to be more indies popping up, more developers out there making games, and then it's already saturated, and it's going to get more saturated. So coming up with creative ideas, collaborative ideas that help you and others stand out, especially in the areas of your focus, is just going to be that much better for you in the long run.
That spoke to my soul. It's beautiful.
Well, I'm glad I was able to do that to you today, Mustapha. You made my day. But yeah, so it's
exciting prospect. Honestly, it really is. I mean, I even thinking about it like selfishly as a developer, thinking about like what it would be like to have, a group of developers from the same region, or a group of developers that works on the same type of game as us, or has a similar aesthetic, or is bird themed, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
just kind of being able to celebrate that with a group of people. It's a great networking opportunity. You get to meet other developers, and that's always a plus. And then you also get to, share your work with the world. Like that is awesome.
Yeah. And it's just fun. Like real quick, like this is like a similar concept and idea I have had for like, is it anything I'm pursuing right now? Are there other people? No. Are there other people doing this? Yes. But I would love to at some point have, whether it's virtual or in person, have some type of like Indies Marketer Conference, right? Like, because one, I think it would be fun. It's a way to collaborate with other people. And I don't know everything. So having that collaboration and other people to just work with, I think could create a very valuable learning experience for myself, but also for everybody else that's involved, right? So like, that's just a quick little, I don't think I've ever shared that publicly before. It's not a big deal that I did or anything. Just simply, it's just one idea that I have thought about before, and it's the concept of it, like the collaboration and doing these types of things, is no different than what I think indies are more than capable of doing. And if anything comes up too, where you're like, oh, I don't know. I don't have that much of an audience yet, or community, and that might be hard to do. Well, in a way, what you're talking about is through collaboration and stuff. It would be a form of, and I hope people aren't thinking this word in a negative term, because I'm not implying that at all, but leveraging, right? If you work with other people and collaborate with other people, then you could leverage their community, they can leverage yours, and it's just basically a form of cross-promotion in a way, but in a much indirect way, right? So just thinking outside of the box with these types of opportunities, I think is a great way. And also I think to be, to a degree, sustainable for the long run, it's almost important. Now, is it the only path? No, of course not. There's any number of directions, but like thinking in these terms, having this mindset, I think is really going to open up the doors for how you guys can stand out. And that's really what we're talking about here now. I know we kind of shifted from events to